Alright, this video is about the retirement age, and we're gonna have a look at a few different places around the world, starting off with France.
France's rival unions united and just for today, claiming victory. They'd hoped for 1 million protesters. They got more, reflecting a nation's fury, 80% against Emmanuel Macron's plan to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64.
I've got a lot of respect for the French and how it's a big part of their culture to take to the streets in large numbers and rally against the government and the decisions by the people in power that they do not agree with. I think it's a great tactic because it obviously will spread awareness, because if you go out to the streets and see everybody there with what's going on, and you get informed. Such a good tactic because then it leads to international news covering it, and then people on the other side of the world knowing that the government's trying to raise the retirement age from 62 to 64. And now moving on to the next country, the United States of America. And so I've got a few clips of politicians being interviewed and talking about what they want to do to Social Security, as well as some of my favourite YouTube political commentators debunking their talking points and explaining how it works over there.
Republicans are leaning in big time to cutting Social Security and Medicare.
The stance against Social Security, it's been there a long time. It's a major piece of the Republican Party platform. It's kind of always been there.
Like literally, you look up the history of Social Security, at every turn, Republicans have tried to destroy it, right? So that's a verifiable fact.
It will be my objective to phase out Social Security.
Potentially sunset programs like Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. Why would you propose something like that in an election year?
Sure. Well, John, that's, of course, the Democrat talking points. It's a
No, it's in the plan. It's in the plan.
But here's let's think about reality for a second. First off, let's talk about Medicare.
But Senator, hang on,
John.
So it's not a Democratic talking point. It's in the plan.
He suggested sunsetting all provisions, all laws every 5 years. Basically, okay, this is a summary of it. That means every 5 years they'd have to reauthorize Social Security and Medicare. And Republicans hate Social Security and Medicare.
They've basically been saying that when the debt ceiling needs to be raised, they're going to hold that hostage to get these cuts.
All four of them told Bloomberg last week that they plan to use this debt crisis hostage technique to get things like Social Security and Medicare eligibility changes.
Now, if you fail to lift the debt ceiling, that means a global economic catastrophe. But it's really important to remember one thing. The catastrophe mostly impacts stock portfolios. And the individuals invested in those stock portfolios happen to be the wealthiest people in the country, including members of Congress.
Are we headed for a standoff where you and your colleagues are demanding of cuts, including Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid?
We did include in our negotiations a reversion to 2022 spending levels that would require changes in some of the mandatory spending, which of course is driven by Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security.
You've been paying, I've been paying, we've all been paying into Social Security for our entire working lives.
Entitlements are going to consume the budget. Right now, we're at 2050, we're going to have 185% of debt to GDP. Medicare and Social Security and other entitlement programs are worth saving are going to consume the debt. We're down to a small fraction of the federal pie to run the discretionary part of government. So entitlement reform is a must for us to not become Greece.
Now, Social Security and Medicare are entitlements because guess what? We pay into those programs. We are entitled to benefit from those programs. That is why they're referred to as entitlements. And that is specifically what the GOP wants to cut or privatize in the case of Social Security.
I think the day could come when we can replace the New Deal with a better deal. Literally give younger Americans the ability to take a portion of their Social Security withholdings and put that into a private savings account that the government would oversee.
The thing about Social Security that makes it so critical is that it is a retirement program that is not tied to risk. Every other form of retirement is tied to risk. It is tied to the markets. So if you're about ready to retire and the market crashes, you're gonna lose a huge portion of your retirement savings because it is invested in the stock market. Social Security takes the risk out of the equation. So if you've got your pension or your 401k or your IRA, in addition to Social Security, there's a lot more financial stability in your elder years as opposed to just relying on this privatized model or retirement accounts that are tied to risk.
If we really want to talk about the debt and spending, it's the entitlements program.
Right, and that's also when you hear people, Republicans talk about moving it into discretionary spending. They want it to be subject to those kinds of cuts.
Yes, and defense spending has always been discretionary. So VA spending is discretionary. What's mandatory are things like Social Security and Medicare. If you qualify for the entitlement, you just get it no matter what the cost. And our problem in this country is that more than 70% of our federal budget, of our federal spending, is all mandatory spending. It's on automatic pilot. You just don't do proper oversight. You don't get in there and fix the programs going bankrupt. It's just on automatic pilot. What we ought to be doing is we ought to turn everything into discretionary spending.
When they say they want to move it from mandatory spending into discretionary, that means they want to go into a pot that isn't supposed to be theirs and steal from you.
So let's all evaluate it so that we can fix problems or fix programs that are broken, that are going to be going bankrupt. Because again, as long as things are on automatic pilot, we just continue to pile up debt. It's mortgaging our kids' future. It's this massive debt burden.
Okay, first off, I want to remind everybody, statutorily, it is against the law for Social Security to contribute to the national debt. It does not contribute to the national debt. It is self-funding.
I do think, though, that things like Medicare and Social Security, if you want them to function long-term and you want to balance budgets and have surpluses, that you are going to need means testing.
If you don't think wealthy people need Social Security, I agree with you. But the best way to means test is to use the system we have for means testing right now, which is called progressive taxation. Increase taxes on wealthy people, and you will get that money back, and you won't have to create a new bureaucratic system. It is the most efficient way to so-called means test everything in society.
76% of voters would rather pay more into Social Security than have its benefits reduced.
76% of voters, including 83% of Democrats, 72% of Republicans, and 70% of independents would rather pay more into Social Security to ensure it remains fully funded than have the benefits slashed.
Because for all the talk on Capitol Hill about we've got to cut domestic spending, we've got to cut discretionary spending, men and women, 70% of what we spend at the national level is on entitlements. And the truth is, we've got to have a conversation.
Just raise or lift, like completely get rid of, I would say, the Social Security cap. There's a tax cap, which every year the number changes, but past a certain amount of income, wealthy people stop getting taxed entirely for Social Security. And so if you just get rid of that cap, I mean, the funding is clearly there, and there's really no good reason for why the cap even exists in the first place, other than wealthy people don't want to pay their taxes.
Raise the cap. Right now, the cap is at $160,000. The first $160,000 you earn is subject to the Social Security tax. If you don't earn that much, everything you earn is subject to the Social Security tax. If you make $200,000, if you make $500,000, if you make $750,000, $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $5 million, $10 million, on and on and on, none of that money, except for the first $160,000, is subject to Social Security taxes.
Right now, the wealthy don't pay the same percentage in Social Security tax as you do. Okay, after a certain amount of income, they stop getting taxed for Social Security altogether. You know what you could do if you're really worried about funding the Social Security program? Lift that tax cap entirely.
Yeah. Eliminate the cap.
Eliminate the cap. End of story.
Let's talk about Social Security and Medicare. As part of these negotiations over the debt ceiling, you are suggesting a new committee to come up with ways to make Medicare and Social Security more financially stable. I want to be clear there. Are you talking about any cuts, benefits?
No cuts to anybody that's receiving their benefits, no adjustments to that. They've earned it.
They try to pretend like, no. We're not gonna cut Social Security and Medicare. We're not gonna privatize it. We're just gonna do things like raise the retirement age, which, by the way, is cutting Social Security.
What raising the age of retirement?
You know, that's interesting that you asked that question. People come up to me, they actually want to work on it.
They want to raise it from 67 to 70 years old.
So that's on the table, you're saying?
Well, you know, if people want to work on it, maybe you need to give them an incentive to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the way to solve every one of these problems, by the way.
I know.
And actually grow wealth at the same time. It just takes that right there.
So let me decode that for you from Republican congressperson talk. Need to give them a little bit of an incentive is, let's take away their money that they are entitled to get because they paid into Social Security their whole life. Let's take away that money, thereby forcing them back into work because they got to pay the bills. And you can't pay the bills if you don't have the check coming in. That's what he's saying.
Right now, we have people not working. As you know, this is a problem for the economy. It also is a problem for financing Social Security and Medicare, and we need to put work incentives in place. That alone will create billions of dollars in savings.
Don't ever let this fact be lost on you when we're talking about how the GOP wants to cut Social Security. That's your money. If a bank were to just take the money that you deposited and give it to rich people or spend it on something, you would be outraged, right? You'd view that as theft. So conceptually, we need to think about what the Republicans are doing as theft as well.
I'm very clear. We will not pass a clean debt ceiling here without some form of spending reform. So there'll never be a clean one. I don't know how they want to say it. That's fine. But at the end of the day, we're going to get spending reforms.
How the failure to raise the debt ceiling will lead to default, and that default would lead to the stock market crashing. The stock market crashing would lead to their stock portfolio suffering. And as we know, as I've talked about on the show multiple times, you have members of both parties heavily invested in the stock market. They don't want to lose money in the stock market by failing to lift the debt ceiling.
Instead of making the wealthy pay their fair share, some Republicans want Medicare and Social Security to sunset. I'm not saying it's a majority. Let me give you, anybody who doubts it, contact my office. I'll give you a copy. I'll give you a copy of the proposal. That means Congress doesn't vote. Well, I'm glad to see you. No, I tell you, I enjoy conversion. You know, it means if Congress doesn't keep the programs the way they are, they'd go away. Other Republicans say, I'm not saying it's a majority of you. I don't even think it's even a significant, but it's being proposed by individuals. I'm not politely not naming them, but it's being proposed by some of you. Look, folks, the idea is that we're not going to be moved into being threatened to default on the debt if we don't respond. Folks.
Because remember, this is a trick. This is a way of ensuring that Republicans get what they want in regard to austerity, knowing full well that that austerity would be incredibly unpopular. But then they get to shift the blame to Democrats if Democrats cave and play ball. They can point to Democrats and say, look, these cuts to Social Security and Medicare happened under the Democrats' watch, not under our watch. You had Joe Biden, a Democrat, in the White House when this happened.
Okay, so Republicans have been after Social Security pretty much since it was created. Social Security being a national self-funded system for retirement payments that comes out of everyone's paycheck. up until the first $100,000 and something that you earn. And now whether they call them spending reforms or entitlement reforms, it all means the same thing, that they want to gut your Social Security. They've listed a few ways, from like sunsetting it to privatizing it, raising the retirement age, moving it from mandatory spending to discretionary spending. And now they are threatening either let them cut your Social Security or they will cause a global economic crisis. Okay, alright, I think I've got most of that. And since I'm Australian, I should probably go through how it works down here with retirement payments. Alright, when we have a look at the Australian Government's Department of Social Services website, it says the age pension is designed to support the basic living standards of older Australians. It is paid to people who meet the age and residency requirements. It is targeted through the means test to those who need it most. Pension rates are indexed to ensure they keep pace with Australian price and wage increases. And then underneath this, there's an interesting table we should have a look at. And so we've got period within which a person was born, the pension age, and the date the pension age changes. It looks like we've got ourselves an interesting little math question here. So if we pick a birthday between these dates, let's see how old that person was on this date, the date the pension age changes, on the 1st of July 2017, and we'll see how far off they are of the new pension age. If their birthday was the 8th of August 1952, they were 64 years old and 10 months on the 1st of July 2017, 2 months shy of what the previous pension age was of 65. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Okay, next one, we pick a birthday between these dates and see how old the person was on the 1st of July 2019. Let's go with the 5th of May 1955. You would have been 64 years old for a month when the pension age was raised once again. Alright, next one. If your birthday was the 7th of October 1956, on the 1st of July 2021, when the pension age changes to add another 6 months, you're 64 years and 8 months old. Alright, last one. Birthday from the 1st of January 1957 onwards. Let's go with the 30th of June, right? So your birthday is just before the date which the pension age changes, and you would be 66 years old when the pension age is now increased by another 6 months to 67. Now this is really upsetting because this is a real situation for real Australians. There's definitely someone that age, probably with that birthday, in this situation where they could really use the age pension. And back when they were 60, the pension age was 65. And then since then, it's been increased to 67. So then as you turn 66, you get told you have to wait another year still. And so now, if you're 65 and 66, you still have to compete for jobs with everyone else, even if you're getting unemployment payments, because now they're job seeker payment, which is financial help if you're between 22 and the age pension age, which keeps going up. Okay, so the age pension payments is kinda meant to be like the very hard to land in safety net below Australia's main retirement fund system, which is, drumroll, superannuation. To put it simply, your employer must pay a percentage of your earnings into your super account, and your super fund invests the money until you retire. And I think honestly what does a good job of summing up superannuation is an ad for a super fund that every single Australian will recognise. You probably already know the one I'm talking about.
Compare the pair. Same age, same income, same starting balance. Whether Cleo switched to an industry super fund 5, 10 or 20 years ago, she's been better. Compare the pair. Same age, same income, same super contribution. Yet there could be a lifetime of difference in their final retirement payout. His fund does not pay commissions to financial advisors. His fund does pay commissions. His fees are lower. His fees are higher. Industry super funds are run only to profit members. Industry super funds.
Had to include one of the old ones. Had to include one of the ones that actually say, his fund does not pay commissions to financial advisors. His fund does pay commissions. His fees are lower. His fees are higher. Now, you see, this was a TV ad from when I was a child, so this meant nothing to me. Now, it's like, oh shit, it is in the Australian law that employers have to pay a percentage of your pay to a fund that's gonna get hit with fees, and the whole point of the fund is to pretty much funnel money into the stock market. And so these super funds that get a percentage of your pay and is meant to look after you when you retire probably won't tell you what they're investing in, because you don't really get a say. Oh well, they kind of use that as like a marketing technique with pick your type of investment. Do you want to only invest in green renewable things, or do you want to only invest in things that will give you the greatest return? And let's have a quick look at some of the investments made by a super fund. Now, just to be clear, those ads were for industry super fund. Different group from where I got this. This list is from Australian Super. So just to make myself clear, it is mandatory for Australian employers to pay a percentage of their workers' pay into a fund that's going to get hit with fees and is pretty much designed to funnel money into stock markets. Which brings me to the point of risk, right? Obvious when it comes to trading in stocks and things, but I would just like to highlight the fact that in the United States, you have Republicans demanding to screw over retirement age Americans, or they're threatening to fuck up the global economy because of a debt limit that's been raised hundreds of times already. So it really just seems like it's there to be used for this, which then puts us in a really shit spot with best case scenario, corruption prevails and saves the day, and they don't want to fuck up their own stock portfolios. This is not where you want to be. This is not the position you want to be in, rooting for corruption. And so my question, which I'm not sure you're going to find anyone else asking, if the US does default on their debt, the impact that will have on the markets, what impact will that then have on the retirement funds of Australians? You see, if anything, Republicans would probably love superannuation. You're telling me that it's mandatory for a percentage of everyone's pay to go into funds to then be invested into the stock market? Oh my god. Where in America, a bit of your pay goes into a fund with the promise that when you reach retirement age, you're gonna get a check. Down here, if you have a decent enough job that pays super into a good enough fund and nothing goes horribly wrong, and then you reach preservation age, you can then access your super fund and use that until it runs out. I'll wrap it up here. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe. I really think I'm one of the only people talking about some of these issues.